2001's GMK Godzilla is potentially the most menacing-looking Godzilla iteration, with his fangs, stocky frame, and infamously his ghastly white eyes. While not as large as the more recent Godzillas, GMK surely conveys the same presence. So naturally, people wondered, just how strong is this guy? And by the time of writing the script, it's been a pretty common consensus that GMK Godzilla sits comfortably in the island to country level ranges. Not bad at all, but certainly not great. There has to be more. A statement, a scan, anything. However, what if I told you that the truth was hiding underneath our noses this entire time? We all knew that GMK Godzilla is 1954 Godzilla. GMK is 1954 Godzilla. Before we get into the GMK Godzilla upscale, I just want to note that in this video we'll be going over the atomic breath power, physical power, durability, lifting class, speed, and hacks. Starting off, how do we know that GMK Godzilla is 1954? Well, watch a movie, and that's the entire fucking point. So to have a kickstart in GMK scaling, we need to go over how strong Grandpa Goji really is. To start off, Grandpa Goji is 50 meters tall, 122 meters long, and weighs 20,000 metric tons, meaning that his gravitational potential energy should be 1.17 tons of TNT, assuming his center of mass is 25 meters up, overall giving him building plus level AP at bare minimum. For more consistency here, Grandpa Goji can also just destroy buildings like any other Godzilla, so this is just more building level stuff. On the topic of Godzilla's physical strength, it states that 1954 can wipe out buildings and Rocky Mountain with a single swing of his tail. Now, this statement is rather hard to calculate, but I've seen it calculated at small city level for some reason, which I believe is pretty dumb since he is casually destroying multiple mountains. So to have this feat more at large mountains and maybe even small island depending on the amount of mountains this feat is accounting for. However, it's important to know that I'm lying to you completely because I do have a calc for this, which I will show later on the video. And that's really it for 1954 Godzilla's physical strength, since he doesn't really do anything else that's too impressive in the movie. But let's move on to his durability now. And he really only has one notable feat here I can mention without spoiling in the next part, and it comes from the Oxygen Destroyer. Because while yes, 1954 Godzilla did indeed die, it's important to know that he was able to endure his weapon for 2 minutes before being vaporized. To take this a little bit further, GMK Godzilla is 1954 Godzilla as we've already established. The bones of Grandpa Goji in this timeline likely survived, meaning they'd be a one-shot difference stronger than his external durability. Not that this really matters, but it's kind of a fun thing to think about. Why is this impressive? Well, the Oxygen Destroyer destroys oxygen on a molecular level, meaning that it completely rips apart moles of an element. This is impressive because breaking one mole of O2 takes 498,000 joules, 0.000119 tons of TNT, which is war level. Breaking a Tokyo Bay worth of O2 molecules takes 9.595 exatons of TNT per second, meaning that Grandpa Goji could endure 1,151.4 exatons until he can begin being hurt, which is 1.1514 zetatons, small planetary. And remember when I said that his bones are a one-shot difference stronger than his body? Which again, literally means nothing in a fight, but just for funsies. Which would mean that 1954 Godzilla skeleton would be able to endure 11.514 zetatons of TNT, which is small planetary still, but you know, deeper into it. Moving on to the trademark being his atomic breath, he really only has one notable feat for this, being the time he boiled a portion of seawater in a short amount of time. This feat has been calced all over the place, however more recent scales have gotten this feat from 82.2 to 1,400 megatons, which is city to large mountain level at low end, and 2 to 28 gigatons, which is large mountain to island level at a mid end, and finally for a high end 3 to 48.5 exatons, which is multi-continental to moon level. Lastly for speed, and this one's the most simple of them all so far, Grandpa Goji can react to Anguirus, who is sub-relative to his atomic breath, which is that speed, which is some relativistic plus to their FTL scaling versus speed. Now you may be thinking, so? GMK Goji is stated to be stronger than Grandpa Goji, sure, but we have no kind of multiplier, so we can't yield how far to upscale GMK off of. Wrong! GMK Godzilla has his own atomic breath AP calculations. Preamp GMK has an atomic breath calculation with a low end, mid end, and a high end. 216 gigatons, large island, 2.273 teratons, small country, and 346.55 exatons, moon plus. Which, might I add, is damn near 100 million times stronger than he's usually scaled. That aside, using this we can calculate the difference in atomic breath power using simple math, converting the low end, mid end and high end values for both into tons of TNT, and dividing them we get a multiplying range of 7.2 to 111.516 at low end, 81.17 to 1136.5 at a mid end, and 154.2 to 2627.7 at a high end. Now you may be thinking, okay, cool, we can just just multiply these values by 1954's calculations and be done. And as much as I'd love to do that, I find it rather contradictory as GMK's atomic breath already has his own calculations. Multiplying somebody he upscales calcs to a figure greater than his own just doesn't work, as you'd be retconning the canon. So where do the upscale multipliers go? Well, on the original calculations, the temperature of 100 million degrees is used to determine Godzilla's atomic breath figure. But wait, GMK is hundreds to thousands of times stronger than 1954, so his atomic breath should be hundreds to thousands of times hotter than 1954's. Using each and every multiplier we got for their power difference, which I'm throwing up on screen, and taking the mean of 686.381 times for a nice consistent end, we got all possible temperatures of GMK's atomic breath being 720 million degrees, 8 billion degrees, 11 billion degrees, 15 billion degrees, 113 billion degrees, and 262 billion degrees. And our control variable of 68 billion degrees that can be set aside for now. So let's sub our values into the formula for preamp GMK's atomic breath, which is power equals 5.67 times 10 to the power of minus 8 times 24,222.7525 times temperature to the fourth power, giving us 2 low ends, 2 mid ends, and 2 high ends, being doing the same for amps GMK using the formula, power equals 5.67 times 10 to the power of minus 8 times 255,728.64536,479 times temperature to the fourth power. We get these results. Now, I won't bore you with the additions, but adding up every number for the pre-amped and post-amped Godzilla, and then finding the mean between those and the pre-established mean values, we get for pre-amped GMK 0.005554, which is large star, and for amped GMK we get 591.14, which is solar system. Taking into account that all of these values are per second, we can take this one step further. Assuming that GMK Godzilla has an average atomic breath duration of 15 seconds, we can just multiply both of these values by 15, 0.08325 large star for pre-amped GMK Godzilla, and 8,866.50 solar system for amped GMK Godzilla. To put this into perspective, this is over 5 times the energy output of a gamma ray burst, what's considered the most powerful phenomena in the universe. Moving on to the physicals, this should be far simpler. GMK Godzilla can simply harm Kaiju with his physical blows, who can tank his atomic breath or at least survive it, meaning that his physical power should scale to his atomic breath's AP. However, his physical blows should be far weaker than his atomic breath, I'd say a one-shot difference, since the Kaiju who could survive his atomic breath, well, they did survive, however they were heavily damaged and lit on fire and close to death. However, while his physical attacks do that, it's just on a much smaller scale and way less blatant. So dividing our pre-amped atomic breath value by 10, we get 13.3 quintillions, small star, and doing the same for amped, we get 59.11 foe, solar system. Nextly, we need to figure out how durable GMK Godzilla should be, and like last time, it should be pretty easy as GMK Godzilla doesn't typically get obliterated by his own physical AP, and he can fight Kaiju who can hurt him and we don't get obliterated by their own AP. Meaning GMK Godzilla would have small star durability pre-amped and solar system durability when amped. We'll be following this approximate format for these next two as we're looking at lifting class first. He should again upscale 954, whose mountain destruction feat has been calculated at 479.6 trillion tons, which is class T. So using our previous values, to put this into perspective, Class E represents a range of lifting strength which is equivalent to the weight of the Earth's entire atmosphere, and even small moons. And once more, we have a moon of 329.011 quadrillion tons, which is class P for preamped, and 3.29011 quintillion tons, which is class E for amped. Next up for speed, GMK Godzilla at bare minimum can fight on par with Kaiju who can dodge his own atomic breath, so light speed to FTL scaling at bare minimum. However, if we're being fun, we can apply GMK's upscale of 954 to the difference in speed. This would find itself more consistent than you'd believe, as GMK is portrayed as far faster and agile than 954, which actually means something as they exist within the same canon. So this is the only time where we can use Godzilla's on-screen representation as a gauge of speed. Yeah, suck my greasy monster those glazers. Moving on, for more consistency, GMK is simply portrayed as a much stronger threat overall, being more aggressive, malicious, larger and more menacing looking, just more powerful, nimble and all that jazz. So it's not too out there to assert that GMK is not only far stronger but also far faster than 1954 Godzilla. However, you are allowed to disagree and cap GMK at light speed to FTL. I have no problem with that and I won't argue against it. That being said, lastly for hacks, GMK is no slouch as I'll be going over all of his hacks and explaining what they mean. Superhuman physical characteristics. Godzilla's power, strength and durability is beyond human or superhuman capabilities. Natural weaponry. Godzilla has teeth, claws and a tail. Large size type 1 is 60 meters tall. Immortality type 1 cannot die from natural causes like old age, disease or decay. Immortality type 2 able to survive lethal injuries. Immortality type 3 able to recover from extreme injury. Immortality type 4 cannot permanently die. Immortality type 7 already deceased, ghost. Regeneration, self-explanatory. Underwater breathing, self-explanatory. Self-sustenance ignores normal life requirements like water, food, etc. Enhanced senses, self-explanatory. Instinctive reactions, was able to react to Mothra without even seeing her. Energy manipulation, able to use energy in attacks, atomic breath. Energy projection, able to emit bursts of energy, atomic breath. Energy absorption, able to absorb energy and energy-based attacks, able to go up to 10 times stronger and triggers a form change. Radiation manipulation, able to use radiation in attacks, atomic breath. Breath attack, able to use the atomic breath. Light manipulation, able to affect or distort light, atomic breath. Heat manipulation, able to raise heat instinctively, atomic breath. Explosion manipulation, able to trigger spontaneous explosions, atomic breath. Transmutation, able to manipulate the form or shape of energy, atomic breath. Electricity manipulation, able to control or affect lightning or electricity. Energy absorption, soul destruction, destroys souls. Soul manipulation, able to absorb souls and use them to go stronger to increase his lifespan. Hand-to-hand combat, slight martial arts. Resurrection, will come back as long as he remains vengeful. Resistance to possession, resisted all 3 guardian monsters trying to possess his body. So in conclusion, GMK Godzilla is more of a beast than people make him out to be, and not some country level fodder. His atomic breath is consistently in those large star level ranges, and while his physical power isn't as impressive sitting at around small star, his physical strength more than makes up for this at class P. He is also extremely tough at around small star, and his speeds takes us even further, consistently being in the FTL plus to MFTL ranges. When fully amped, GMK has more easy solar system scaling for his atomic breath. His physical power still isn't as impressive as it's not as far into solar system. His physical strength can now be argued in those class E ends, and he's even tougher now in that solar system tier, and the speed can likely be argued in his MFTL to MFTL plus ranges even more consistently. GMK Godzilla further cements himself as a powerhouse in the Godzilla scaling scene, being strong enough to outmuscle and vaporize most Godzillas. And say, if that doesn't work, he can just destroy or absorb his opponent's souls, which is an instant KO to anyone slower than him who doesn't have the hacks that counters him. I hope my scaling was persuasive for you, and tell me in the comments what Godzilla you want to see me scale next. Though I will probably be doing Kaiju Saga Godzilla, but hey, interaction mate. But that concludes today's videos. Don't die, eat honey buns, and remember to swing by for the next video. Jam matter. Also GMK low diffs monster forward Godzilla lol.